Hey guys, and welcome to LBB 91 Coaching. Look, today we're talking to you guys about dismissive avoidance and the way they handle money. Because let me just say this straight, dismissive avoidance don't play about their money. Why? Because money for them is not only about financial freedom, it's also control. It's the one area that they can actually have sovereignty over, and they're not going to let you or anybody else mess that up for them. We know with dismissive avoidance how they feel about asking for help and relying on others. In fact, you asking them of money isn't necessarily about them being cheap, but rather more about the fact that they're viewing you as somebody who's not independent and can look after themselves, which then begins to trigger the trapped wound in them, meaning they're going to have to support you for however long, X amount of months or years, and they don't have a time limit for it, which actually then triggers the boundary issue and the assertive issue and the ability to be able to speak up about what they actually want. And so if you ever wonder why your partner may freak out around conversations around finances, spending, merging your money together, or why they get cold when they speak about the future, or maybe you did something around the finances and they freaked out around about it, then today we're going to explain why this happens. Again, it's not about them being cheap, but rather it's about their control, their need to feel like they are independent and no one else can mess that up for them. And so hopefully we get to explain this in its fullest entirety for you in this next few moments and talk about how finances for them also speaks to emotional safety and emotional danger as well. But before we go anywhere else, we've got to explain a little bit more about attachments. Before I do that, I need you to like, share, subscribe, click on the bell button for notifications of the uploads as well. And don't forget to hype the video going forward. So let's talk a little bit about dismissive avoidance, because maybe you're new to this particular aspect and don't know what we're talking about. Well, this was something coined by a British psychologist called John Bowlby, who was watching how young children would interact with their caregivers. And he discovered that there were a couple categories that children fall into when it comes to emotional attachments, meaning the way that we bond with people emotionally. And what he found with dismissive avoidant children is that they tend to have a very nonchalant, very almost, they're not affected by whether people come or whether they go. They're almost numb in a sense. And so how he saw that, how that child would interact with the caregiver, he noticed that attunement would then play a role in adult relationships. Dismissive people tend to dismiss, that's why their name is that. They dismiss their own emotions. They are independent, highly independent people who don't want to rely on anybody else. They seek for situations where they have control and they have some say in what they do in a scenario, meaning that they don't want to be let down by other people. They don't want to place their faith in other people. They have a high esteem of themselves, but they don't have as much of a high esteem of other people. Why? Because you could let them down. You could disappoint them. And that's actually where we're going to talk about when it comes to this money situation. We need to first talk about what belief system that these dismissive avoidant people have, because maybe you have a partner who for sure when you talk about finances, it's like, or we know when you start talking about money, it becomes a core crux issue. And so we want to be able to help you and be able to maneuver you through that particular space. They're not cheap, okay? They're not necessarily people who don't want to spend money, but it's actually more about the control, as I said before. So let's look at some of the core beliefs. The core beliefs is money equals freedom and dependence equals weakness. We know dismissive avoidant people that when they grew up, they couldn't depend on their caregiver. So what they learn is that people can't depend on other people. It only leads to disappointment. So when you decide you want to lean upon them, they're going to have to figure out how long for, because otherwise they're going to feel trapped. Okay. They feel like they have to control all their finances and all the costs that come with it. So imagine, I can give an example. One of the things that also happened to me as a dismissive avoidant person is, for instance, okay, we plan a holiday and okay, am I paying all the holiday then? Is it all on me as a quote unquote man? I have to pay for everything. And I start calculating everything. Okay, well, I calculate the holiday. I'm like, okay, that's gonna be £4,000 if I have to pay for everything, and you don't pay for anything at all. Now that suddenly now I don't want to go on this holiday. Now I don't say that, but I'll just maybe just kind of remove myself from the situation. I may not talk about it. I may not bring it up anymore. I may just avoid the topic in general. Why? Because now I feel vulnerable in this space because you're going to ask me to spend a lot of money, which I don't want to spend, which makes me feel like I'm now trapped and I now feel like I have no choice. And that then comes back to what we call about emotional safety. Why is that emotional safety? Because I'm afraid of being embarrassed and shamed. So when it comes to money, I definitely understand how it feels. And dismissive avoidance feel the exact same way. It's like you're trapped because you're going to feel that shame of embarrassment. You're going to feel that shame of, do I not have, I don't want to say like I don't have enough money, or I don't want to seem like, I can't afford it, right? But really and truly, when they're calculating, that's actually how they feel, but they don't want to tell you, all right? Because that would mean exposing themselves. So the reason why dismissive avoidance are going to struggle is because they're overly rigid. They don't discuss money, so then you can't have a conversation around actually what it looks like. And so that makes it much more harder. We don't want to share burdens because, again, sharing the burden means weakness. It means I now have to merge my finances with you. And if I merge my finances with you, my fate is also tied with you. And if my fate is tied with you, you have some level of control over my life. That's what it feels like for the dismissive avoidant. Okay, so they're gonna try and keep that rigid boundary with you. Now, they believe that letting people in some shape of the word, means losing autonomy over scenarios and their life. And using money as a protective piece can be also a way of avoiding emotional closeness. If I say, oh, we don't have enough money to do this X, Y, Z, it's not really about the money. It's about the event. It's about the experience. About the holiday. It's about the time spent. But a dismissive avoidant will make it about the money because for them, it means another way of keeping you emotionally distant. Okay. All right. So you'll see this with dismissive avoidant people. They're not necessarily trying to be selfish, but it might come across as selfish. They'll be too strict to their boundaries. And what really is happening is when they've calculated their day, their month, their year, and their budget, it's not in the budget. It's gonna keep them too close to the lowest scale of their budget, in a sense. What that means in that they have it almost feels like a scarcity mindset. It's like, I don't want to get to a place where I have to start thinking about cutting back on my life in order for you to benefit, right? So for them, it's my money and I want to do what I want to do with it. And I don't want to have to be drawn into helping you because then that would affect me, right? I think that's really good boundaries in some sense, but it goes too far at points where it becomes that you can't help people simply because you don't want to lose out. Right? They can avoid joint planning, long-term commitments. They will keep their private financial life secretive, and it may look like they're trying to con you maybe as well. And it's hard to kind of tell because I mean, in this generation, 2025, how would you know? You have to have open-ended conversations to really find out what their thought process is around money. Okay, and it can look like stinginess, but the reality is it's just a fear of control and a fear of loss of control. Okay. So some of the warning signs you're going to see if you're dating someone like this or you're talking to someone else, have a friend like this, maybe it's you yourself, okay? You know that you don't like talking budgets and financial goals, especially with other people. You can do it on your own, but doing it with other people, no, right? It's going to be much harder. And if you do discuss it, what you're expecting is for them to hold firm to those budgets. What you don't like is people going outside of the confinements of the budget you've set. If we've set a budget and set a parameter, I expect you to adhere to that. I don't expect you when it gets hard to start cutting back and start removing money from the account. That immediately tells us that you have a spending problem or you are not disciplined enough. And therefore, your ill discipline can't come into my life and make me ill disciplined. I immediately want to push that person away. Okay. All right. So it's easier to keep things separate because it means that when things go wrong on your end, it's on your end. It's not my end. I don't want to be tied into your fate. Okay, so that shared financial responsibility again means a loss of autonomy, but it also means consequences coming to both of us, right? Which triggers a childhood wound, which is that as a child you didn't learn how to co-regulate. You were taught that you had to always do it by yourself. So somebody sharing their fate with you would also then deny that truth that which is everybody should stand on their own 2 feet. You shouldn't need me, right? I can filter in when I need to filter in, but it shouldn't be an expectation. Okay. So that's the hardest thing for dismissive avoidance when it comes to finances. A big thing for them is a trigger around it is people who spend quote unquote randomly, recklessly, who spend money and then don't have money at the end of the month. That is a biggest trigger, right? Or you keep on asking for money and you're not actually figuring it out yourself. That will totally ruin a dismissive avoidant because, again, what you're saying is you're not able to be independent. You're now looking at me as the bank. You're now looking at me as an individual who's supposed to bail you out, but you really should have your own by yourself. Everybody should have their own. That's the dismissive avoidance perspective. Everybody should be independent. And the moment you're not, you're going to impede my life and control how I spend my money because now I've got to provide for you. Okay. All right. So for the dismissive avoidant, if you're one of those people, all right, I want you to understand that sharing doesn't remove independence. And I want you to understand that you can share as much as you want to share, right? You have the ability to say yay or nay. You do not have to do exactly what the person said. If the person asked you for £50, you don't have to give £50 if you don't want to give £50. If you can only give 30, you give 30. You have control still in this scenario, okay? Being ready and open to transparent conversations around goals and also fears. The only way to conquer the fear is to speak about the fear. What is the fear here? The fear is that you feel like, okay, in this scenario, you feel like, right, you're unable to be truthful about your true sentiments around finances. You feel like if you say what you feel about the way they handle finances, this could lead to rejection. And so, in truth, you need to be open and truthful about it. Once you are, it frees everybody to be able to then start having a real conversation around money. Yes, financial collaboration isn't control. It feels like that, but only when we're not being truthful about what we want and what we desire and what our goals are. Once we start speaking about our goals, this allows us to be able to say, okay, this is how much freedom we can allow ourselves or how much restrictions we have to put on ourselves. But look, I want to make it very clear. This is why I dismiss avoidant men and women, they won't share their finances, or at least they won't share the shared, they don't want the shared responsibility of things going wrong. I hope I've helped you guys in this space. If you want to know more and maybe you want to heal or grow or transform in this particular area, then by all means, please do click on the link down below and join our one-to-one coaching program as well. We'll see you again soon. Much love, much appreciation. Don't do anything I wouldn't do.